Good day, everyone. Welcome to today's LinkedIn Live session on the topic Is Your Recruitment Tech Stack Ready for 2026? Where we'll be diving deep into the must have recruitment tools and technologies that improve efficiency and candidate engagement. I'm Latiba, Associate Content Writer at Recruit CRM, and I'll be moderating today's session. While I'll mostly be behind the scenes, our expert here will be taking the spotlight. Joining us today is Nate Wylie. Let me give you guys a quick introduction to Nate, right? So, Nate is a founder and head of talent at Infinite Talent, a recruitment leader and strategist with over 11 years of talent acquisition experience. He's worked with major companies like Lyft, Electrolux, and Tangelo, scaling recruitment teams and implementing cutting edge DA systems. Nate also specializes in data driven recruitment process design, talent operations, and recruiting analytics. He's also a startup mentor at RevTech Labs Foundation and a venture partner at Silos Ventures. He brings to the table deep expertise in document technology implementation and optimization. Welcome, Nate. We're so happy to have you here with us today. Do you want to say a quick hi to the audience and a bit about what we'll be discussing today?
Yeah, well, first of all, I appreciate the invite and for being here. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, so today we're going to sort of touch on the surface level of what a good tech stack looks like for recruiting for now and in the future moving forward. So really going over some of those key components that put together a strong sort of recruiting program with it anchored in the systems and the processes that we use. So I'm excited.
All right. Thank you, Nate. So, with that, we can get started with the session, right? So, Nate, my first question to you, let's start with the basics here. Yeah. So, what are the core components every modern recruitment tech stack should include?
Okay. Um, yeah, I think every recruiter sort of, you know, lives and dies by the ATS. So we want to make sure that you're starting with an applicant tracking system that one has those sort of I don't want to call them components because it has a lot of different types of plugins and integrations that you can use to whether expand on it or there's a lot of new ATSs out right now where you can actually buy an all-in-one type of package. But you want to make sure that it's optimized and also that it's one that can scale with your team and or your company. Um, I don't know how deep you want to go into the ATS. I feel like we can spend the whole 30 minutes talking about that. But one thing that I've learned in implementing ATS for a couple of different startups is one, getting one that can be configured and also managed by a very lean team, where if you have those more robust ATS systems that require almost a full, separate team in order to manage to update, whether it's templates, notifications, documents, e-signatures, all those different types of uh, different items that go into an applicant tracking system. So starting with that and making sure that you're selecting one that you, if you're a team of one or if you're a small team, can actually manage. And then making sure that you're spending the time to actually set it up in a way that's going to be effective and be optimized for whatever it is type of scale that you're needing, whether you're doing a ton of hiring or whether you're making 2 to 5 hires every month or every couple of months. On top of that, I would say understanding how you plan to manage your candidate pipelines, and that's both inbound and sourcing. As we all know, most applicant tracking systems have Chrome extensions and/or some sort of plugin that ties directly into any sort of external sourcing tools and/or LinkedIn Recruiter. And so, making sure that you're able to actually easily get those candidates that you're sourcing into your applicant tracking system and tagging them and attaching them to the right jobs, so that you can go back and find them and add them to sequences and/or send them more personalized messages. And then also coming up with a way that you can actually resurface that talent, whether you decide to reach out to them or not in that particular moment. So you got the applicant tracking system, you have your sourcing efforts. Something that I feel I know there's a lot of different AI tools out right now. I'm still on ChatGPT. I'm finding it very useful and helpful, but um, using some sort of recording tool, whether it's taking the Zoom notes, whether it's recording your notes in Google, or whether it's like a MetaView, a BrightHire, or some of those other type of tools, but I've been doing a lot of recording of my conversations with not just the candidates, but also those additional meetings that I'm having with the hiring managers, even past intake. And I'm creating sort of an agent database within ChatGPT where I'm storing those. Usually, I'll convert the transcripts into a summarized file and I'll add that to ChatGPT. And what I do is I use that as almost my recruiting companion. So as I receive updates, as I calibrate, as hiring managers let me know who they like, who they don't like, I'm actually updating that agent within ChatGPT. And so now I can actually calibrate with it in addition to a hiring manager. So as I'm finding new candidates or as I'm reviewing inbound candidates, I'm actually dropping some of those resumes into ChatGPT and asking them based on feedback from the hiring manager, what are some particular potential flags and or how would they rank this person against other candidates that the hiring manager has found qualified for the role. So that's been very helpful, and that's something that I feel like all recruiters need to start to implement because essentially what we're trying to always do is get into the head of a hiring manager. So essentially, if you want to call that like a hiring manager brain that you're building out, and what you're doing is you're adding all of the sort of the calibration calls, all the scorecards, any information that you feel like is going to help you dial into the right candidate. You can actually store that within a chat GPT agent and reference that whenever you need to understand if a candidate might be a good fit or not. And so having that assessment and or intelligent tool to help you complete scorecards, I think that's been a game changer for me. Having those automated summaries, that's I would almost put that second to my applicant tracking system. That used to be um, the worst part about recruiting for me is you go on these sprints of having these calls all day, and then at the end of the day, you've had six screening calls, and you've been either taking hand notes or trying to type out notes, and now you're trying to go back and decipher, what were you actually trying to say about each individual, and how do you expand on that, and how do you sell these individuals to the hiring manager. But having a some sort of note taker within that call, so that you can actually focus on the conversation, so that you can ask follow up questions, and sort of really be um, active in a mode of active listening, and so that you can kind of probe and dig deeper and not be so concerned with trying to capture everything that the candidate is trying to say to you. Then you can also go back and reference that call and extract additional information from that that may be separate from what you provided to the hiring manager the first go around. They may have some additional questions that you can actually go back and ask most of these systems what was mentioned around a particular topic and be able to share that information with the hiring manager as well. So that is for myself personally, and for any recruiter, I would suggest almost a non-negotiable moving forward, so that you can be a lot more intelligent about how you're sharing your candidates, and also have a lot more insight into how each individual candidate screen has gone, and then be able to compare and contrast that way, and so that you can also improve upon yourself. I've oftentimes um, dropped several transcripts from these candidate screening calls into ChatGPT and asked ChatGPT to help me come up with better questions or more comprehensive questions or more or phrase them more of a conversational way so that it doesn't seem like I'm coming out scripted while also being able to assess and qualify candidates. And it does a great job of sort of listing out some of these questions again based on what the hiring manager is looking for as well. So I'll take a pause. I feel like that was a very long response to the first question.
Oh, well, thank you so much for that. It was actually really helpful. And I think all of us here would agree that note takers are especially been really helpful for all of us. Yeah. So, my
Yeah.
next question for you is actually, you briefly touched on this just now, but let's talk about how. So, how can technology help you better understand your client needs, right? So, how can AI enable workflow spanning and smart intake tools actually help recruiters capture hiring requirements from managers? So, you just briefly touched on this, but you can elaborate on this more if you'd like to.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, as I mentioned, I've been using the AI note taker when conducting my intake calls as well. And you can also use ChatGPT or some sort of AI source to come up with better intake questions. What I like to do as I prep for an intake is, of course, review the job description. Depending on if it's a client that I'm doing a contingent search for, if I'm in house, really sort of loading in additional information around what I already know. The company size, how much revenue it may be doing, the products, the services. All this sort of helps me prepare to have that conversation. One, so I can ask better questions and not just be surface level with what the hiring manager or the hiring team may be looking for, but I can ask more insightful questions and really probe into beyond the job description what they may be needing from this person, including to but not limited to what does success look like, what tools they need, what technology, what software, what does success previously have looked like. One thing that I'm seeing from a lot of hiring managers is just having the title and being enrolled isn't enough to sway them that a person may be a good fit, but really understanding, what impact, what change, what have they actually implemented, what has really qualified as them being successful in their previous or current positions. And so, really being able to frame all that in a way to help me better understand one, how to look for candidates, and then also how to screen candidates. Because usually the best candidates don't have these, you know, robust LinkedIn profiles. They just have a title and a company, and you just kind of have to go off gut feeling if this person may or may not be a good fit. But one thing that ChatGPT and or AI has been able to do is really understand those comparable companies, whether they're competitors or they may be companies that provide products and services to the same types of users or businesses, and then generate a list of companies that I can also use in my search. So it really helps me almost get a head start so that I'm not figuring these things out. Most recruiters know, you can source for a week and then not really find what you're looking for, and then as you continue to calibrate and the hiring manager starts to give you their why or why not, then you kind of drill down and start to understand more about what they may be looking for. AI has really sped up that process in a way, and like I say, starting with generating a list of companies that I can recruit from, whereas one, maybe they have strong programs that the hiring manager has been impressed with, and so they would be happy to have someone from those companies. Or, as I mentioned, um, being able to curate that list of companies that may have very similar products or services. And so that would be like being able to easily transfer that person into the company that you're recruiting for.
All right, Nate, thank you for that. Now, moving on to my next question, and we're going to talk about sourcing, right? You just mentioned how you use ChatGPT to get like a head start, while looking at the candidates' profiles and the company profile and everything, right? So, and you've also implemented, systems in some major companies where you've worked. So, what is intelligent sourcing like? How does it actually look like in practice when you're trying to find candidates, either in like your old databases or new platforms, right? How does it actually look like in practice?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer the question and say, in practice, intelligent sourcing is going to start with resurfacing those candidates that you've already either touched base with, that have already applied, but just basically those candidates you already have within your applicant tracking system and or your CRM. I want to be completely honest with the audience and say that's not what we always do. I kind of compare it to, you might have food at the house, but you still want to order DoorDash or something, and that's what a lot of recruiters do. We'll get a new requisition, and the first thing we do is run to LinkedIn and start to source new candidates before we check to see if we have people in our database who have already shown interest in the organization and or people we've already sourced in the past. Maybe we reached out to them last time and the timing wasn't right. Maybe we reached out to them last time and the compensation wasn't what they're looking for. Either way, those individuals would be, a better place to start versus going out and doing a cold search. Um, and so a lot of applicant tracking systems right now have a lot of automation built in to where they can resurface candidates based on a new job posting. My advice to everyone would be to really slow down and look into all the capabilities of your current applicant tracking system, because they've come a long way over time, and a lot of them have created these new tools and are trying to be optimized in a way to make recruiters' life a lot easier. But as recruiters, we're kind of creatures of habit, and so myself included, I'll try to break myself out of them. But I talk to a lot of recruiters that have been recruiting the same way for 10 plus years, and it's hard to get us out of those old those old routines of how we've been successful in the past. But if we take the time to really put some new practices into place, I think we'll realize that we can even become better recruiters than what we already are. And so, but if you are having to do new searches, there are tons of tools out there. I don't want to necessarily shout out different tools on the platform, but uh, there are a lot more sourcing tools now that are a lot more intuitive. And I think the biggest thing is that switch from your standard Boolean string language of and or not, quotes and parentheses in order to speak to um, LinkedIn, usually, or Google search. And now you can really talk to a lot of these new sourcing tools in common language, and be able to almost brain dump in very concise, fragmented way what you're looking for and what you're not looking for. And then with those tools having AI embedded in it, will almost create that Boolean string on the back end, and or fill out any sort of filters in order to start your search. And so it's sped up being able to calibrate those candidates. And then it also has most of those tools have like a um, almost like a Tinder app effect of being able to say who you like and who you don't like, and then it's continuously trying to learn what those ideal candidates are going to look like, which is been awesome. I played around with several. Some are better than others, but once you do provide that feedback of why you're choosing to move a candidate forward or not move a candidate forward, it does learn in real time, and you can um, regenerate a search at any time if you feel like the search isn't matching what you're looking for. Once you are dialed in and feel like you're well calibrated on that search, you can actually automate um, the outreach sequences. And so being able to almost set it and forget it. And if you trust that they've dialed in on it, and it can start to reach out to these people as it's generating these new matches. Um, I do, ask people to be mindful. You don't want to uh, trust it in a way that you wake up and your whole week is filled up with candidates wanting to talk to you, and you feel like uh, a certain percentage of those candidates wouldn't be a good fit. And I don't want to put you in a position where you're having to reach back out to them and tell them never mind. So just make sure that one, you feel like it's well calibrated, and two, that you have the bandwidth to allow a system to automatically add candidate calls to your calendar.
All right. Now that we just talked about sourcing candidates, now let's now talk about screening candidates, right? Can you walk us through how modern screening and assessment tools use AI to reduce bias while also simultaneously improving candidate matching?
Yeah. So um, the reducing bias part, I think, is still kind of subjective, and again, it depends on who's looking at those resumes. So even if the AI tool is reducing bias, it depends on that recruiter and that hiring manager of once it gets in front of them. But there are ways, like if you want to submit anonymous resumes and or remove some sort of any identifiable information that you feel like would result in any bias, by all means. Um, it's up to that individual or that company's policies as far as how they want to do it. But one thing that I know I've done with ChatGPT when I had a lot of inbound applicants to review was I created a prompt in which I was instructing ChatGPT of what a strong application would look like, and asked it to start to rank the candidates as I downloaded them into to ChatGPT on a scale of 1 to 10, and be able to explain to me, what each ranking represented, and what potential red flags would be, and why this person could potentially be a good fit. And so, being able to create a system that is being um, hopefully consistent and fair across all the resume reviews, and providing these scoring rubrics in a way where it's not me taking guesses, or trying to understand based on whether it was the company, or the school they went to, or how many matches they have with me, all these other variables that come into that can create bias. I do feel like that is a way that we should be operating, so that one, candidates are getting fair opportunities, but also that we're presenting candidates to hiring managers, and the hiring manager isn't sort of expressing their bias of, oh, I need someone who went to an Ivy League school, or I need someone who has only worked for unicorn startups, or has only worked for Fortune 50 companies, and things like that. And so you're able to kind of really break out why a person might be a good fit. And then what you're doing is you're almost forcing the hiring manager to explain to you, um, you know, what difference would it have made if that person had went to a different school, or they had worked for a previous company in the past that may not be relevant right now, based on what that person's capabilities are. So I have been enjoying using that, and sort of being able to make that case to hiring managers, to get them to understand a candidate's skill sets and talents may be past what they just see on the paper. So that's really has been a big unlock for me. And again, like I say, being able to, last time I did this, I was able to drop 10 resumes in at a time, but being able to upload 10 resumes, and then it ranked those 10 resumes, was not just a big time saver, but also it, again, was helping me calibrate, and better understand which candidates in our inbound pipeline would be an ideal fit for the position.
All right. Now, on to my next question for you. I'm pretty sure people in the audience are really looking forward to your answer for this one, right? So, what's your framework for evaluating and selecting recommend technologies, and how do you ensure new tools integrate well with existing systems?
That's a great question. I'm I'm such a TA tech nerd. I try a lot of tools. I have a lot of free trials I run with. I've taken demos with almost anyone that reaches out. I think it comes down to understanding, what your individual needs and resources are. If you're actually evaluating, bringing on new tools, like, one, do you need it? How's it going to optimize your process? Who's going to use it? And making sure you have buy-in. I think one of the biggest waste of money is, um, I've done, as well as I've seen companies do, is you sign a contract, and you spend time implementing and transferring data, and then the tool goes either unutilized or underutilized. And so if you know you're not going to use it, and you're just being sort of blinded by the shiny thing, I would recommend people take a step back. You want to make sure that you're sort of minimizing friction within systems as well. So um, I myself wouldn't, want to necessarily bring on a new tool or implement a new tool if it doesn't integrate. If data isn't going to be, transferred both ways, in which that your ATS and or your CRM and or your sourcing tool, whatever it is that you plan to integrate, if you're having to duplicate that data, per candidate or per outreach, that's going to get very tedious over time, and that's probably going to lead to your recruiting team reverting back to what they know, and not utilizing that new technology, or that new system. And then also just understanding, again, like, your resources, and by resources I mean like the time it's going to take to implement, the money it's going to take to implement, and the people it's going to take to implement. All of these are should be factored in, and again, there should be a need for this. So either your current technology is inefficient, Maybe it's not scaling. Maybe the team isn't utilizing it. But one thing I've learned is sometimes like we'll jump to get something new when the current system would work in a way we wanted to if we took the time to optimize it. So that would be sort of my advice as you're sort of evaluating these new tools. Um, and also, before you commit to anyone, I would spend a lot more time, just like with hiring, talking to more candidates before you hire someone. Talk to these different companies. One thing that I enjoy about um, dealing with new tech companies, particularly in the TA space, is how helpful they are once you come on board. Like, what does customer success look like? What does your account manager? Sort of how do they communicate with you? Does it take a long time to get feedback or response or questions answered? I think that's a big part of evaluating tools as well that I think a lot of people probably leave out because you're going to need some help if you're implementing this, and then joining those excuse me what are those continuous learning opportunities that company offers. Do they hold webinars? Do they tell you about product updates? Do customer success schedule monthly check-ins with you to make sure that you're using these tools? I've seen some of the better tools be a lot more successful and get a lot more buy-in when they're almost forcing teams to use these features and make sure that they're getting the most out of their product.
All right. Now, on to my final question for you today, Nate. So many teams worry about the cost and complexity of upgrading their tech stack, right? So what would your advice be to them if you have to give them any insights on how to prioritize which tools they should be investing in first?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the complexity probably is more important to the cost, if I'm being honest. Especially some of these newer tools, they aren't as expensive as they were years ago when there was only two or three that sort of ran the market. So now some of these newer tools are just as efficient and they cost way less. And if you're an early adopter, you get more of that white glove touch as well. Um, but I would say one would again just ground yourself in do you really need it? I think we get excited about new tools and new processes, and again I think what you need to do is understand what is your recruiting environment, how much hiring are you doing, how many different hiring managers are involved, what's the scope and scale of your current recruiting program, how large is your organization. I think these are all factors you need to really understand, because at the end of the day, from my experience, most hiring managers couldn't care less like where the candidate came from, what process they ran through, what system they came through, how many sequences you added them to. All that matters is is this a good candidate? Can they do the job? And so, sort of prioritizing, how do you manage the inbound applicants? That's where I would start. And then I think scheduling is a big one that I would prioritize as well, because that's when you really start to interact with other members involved in this process, and depending on the seniority of those members, uh, they don't want their time wasted. They don't want to do a lot of back and forth. And so being able to really streamline and create like a seamless experience for yourself, for the hiring manager, and for the candidate to connect, to communicate, to whether it's hopping on a Zoom call, whether it's a phone call, um, having those notes, excuse me, having the AI note taker join automatically. And so that the notes are distributed to everybody involved immediately after, so that we can review and make decisions. I think those are the sort of the components that I would prioritize. Everything else, I'm not going to say it falls into place, but once you find a candidate and once you're able to schedule that candidate in a very sort of like seamless way, and everything goes well and they have a good experience, a lot of that then is handled kind of offline. Like, that's you being the recruiter, that's you being personable, that's you really being the project manager of the process to make sure that everything moves forward and gets across the finish line.
All right. Thank you so much, Nate, for that amazing session. Since we're running a little bit short on time, we won't be taking any questions live. But if you have any questions for Nate, please feel free to drop it in the chats. We'll be picking it up, we'll be sharing it with him, and you can still get your questions answered, right? So, Nate, do you have any closing remarks for the audience before we wrap up?
The only thing I would say is embrace technology. I think at the end of the day, this is still a people business, and so we're not going to be completely removed from it, especially depending on the type of hiring that you're doing. I know a lot of professionals I touch base with still want to connect with real people, so I think that's always going to be a requirement. But don't be scared to try a new process or learn a new tool or at least A/B test a new process so that you can understand where your time is going, and if you can make more time to make more connections, I feel like they'll make you a better recruiter.
Thank you, Nate. Thank you. With that, we come to the end of the session today. Don't forget to connect with Nate on LinkedIn and check out his company, Infinite Talent. I've dropped the links in the chat. If you'd like to learn more about Recruit CRM, feel free to visit our website. If you're interested in exploring our ATS Plus CRM, you can easily book a free demo with us today where we'll walk you through everything. We also offer a no commitment, unlimited free trial so you can experience everything firsthand. And don't forget to follow us on social media to stay updated on our upcoming LinkedIn events and also other exciting news. All of the links are in the chat right now, so you can go ahead and check them out. And thank you so much for joining us today, and we can't wait to see you at our next event.